Shepherd Freeman. I've been in cybersecurity industry for about 25 years, having been in roles in a variety of different organizations, from CISO and technical director of security for multinational companies and universities and various other organizations. And I have a particular interest in sort of promoting cybersecurity as something which is absolutely necessary for everyone.
Hello, my name is Richard Archdeacon. I've been in security, it's not like Stefan, I think. Currently I'm acting as an independent advisor to a lot of high-tech security organizations. Prior to that, I was an advisory CISO with a company called Cisco, where I covered most of the web. I spent several years doing that. And prior to that, I was the head of security strategy for an organization called Google Platform Services.
So, Alex, over to you, and
thank you very much.
We're going to have position statements now, Brian.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, in accordance with what we have planned, we're going to have some opening statements from our panelists, 3 minutes each, in order to establish, maybe to send some special messages or establish some institutional positions or messaging that might not have been reflected in the questions that we have prepared or the questions that we might have from the audience. So I'd like to start again with Executive Director Seychatz from the Partnership for Peace Consortium. Yes.
Very good. Well, I think that the questions that we're going to cover today are going to be the most interesting piece. So let me simply say a couple things here at the beginning. And I think you've already heard these themes repeated many times throughout this week. Number one is none of us can do it alone. No matter how big a nation or organization is, monolithic solutions will not succeed and cannot be resilient. They are like glass castles. They may be beautiful, they may be perfect for your needs at the moment, but they are ultimately fragile and cannot evolve. So it's only through diversity and cooperation that we can be resilient and we can succeed. But I'll add one other thing to that, which is we often, especially when we talk about technology, emphasize the technology, of course. But most often, technical systems fail because of people and processes. So as we think about cooperation, we should also put not technical cooperation at the forefront, but the cooperation around people and processes, and then the technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very useful message. We keep forgetting there's not just technology here, but also organizations and more. I'd like to give the floor to Brigadier General Patriche from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Please, sir.
Thank you. I'll start by saying that I'm going to echo what Saya just said. We cannot do it alone. We are very aware of our responsibility at the level of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, having all the spectrum of responsibilities that we are in charge, from regulating the domain of cybersecurity to improving the cybersecurity and defense system that we are building at the level of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and of course trying to get the synergy inside the minister. We have built so far more than 6 sectoral security operational centers that are coordinated by the main one that is located in, at my headquarters unit. And we are trying to build up resilience and become more attractive to the national and international partners, and send a message that we are prepared to take up responsibility to be part of a joint task force that to enhance cybersecurity at the Romanian national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Christa, please, the floor is yours.
Awesome, thank you. So it's quite obvious that from this panel I have the privilege to talk mainly about technology. It's an intrinsic piece of the puzzle, people, processes, and then of course technology. And yeah, this comes naturally because I have huge experience working for cybersecurity vendors, and I'm the pleasure to be with CrowdStrike, which is innovating a lot here in Romania, with the second largest R&D center after the one in the United States at the headquarters. The second one is here in Bucharest. So more than 300 experts are contributing with the innovation in the entire portfolio. And at CrowdStrike, you will find first and foremost a resilient by design model, which is extremely important. And then, of course, we should keep in mind the mantra that is underpinning everything that CrowdStrike is doing, which is we stop breaches. And I would rather rephrase it. We help you stop breaches, because it's not only the technology we give you, you have to put the right human resources in place. But definitely we can save you a lot of resources, because the level of automation and the AI native architecture that CrowdStrike is offering to you means you save time, means you are confident you are a bit ahead of the adversaries in the cyberspace. This is what we do. We collect huge amount of telemetry from the entire world. We stitch together data and we provide you rapid responses underpinning the infrastructure layer, which is essential in preventing breaches these days. Yeah. So I will build on when the questions will follow, because it's simply almost impossible to stop when we talk about technology.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krista, and I'd like to introduce now Mr. Daskalov for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much. My opening remarks are actually related to something that I heard yesterday in a panel. North Korea has 6,800 cyber soldiers who are working on a daily basis to exploit vulnerabilities in our systems. Yesterday, it was shared that the number of finances that they have stolen over the past few years is around $1 billion. That was not correct. It's around $2 billion, and the number only consists of the crypto assets, according to the author of the Lazarus Heist book. So we are not even counting the numerous banks they have hacked into over the last years across the entire world. And my question to all of you is, does Romania have 6,800 cyber defenders to counter the North Korean army, only the North Korean army? Bulgaria don't have even 80 people working on this, not 800 or 6,800. And the situation is the same across the entire European Union, and not only in the European Union, but around the Western allies. Therefore, we need to tap into untapped potential for cyber defense. And my solution, the solution I'm here to propose and to be advocating for, is to empower cybersecurity researchers to have flexible legislation across the European Union, in Romania, in Bulgaria, in the UK, that is protecting cyber researchers who are doing coordinated vulnerability disclosure of vulnerabilities in the cybersecurity field. Because currently, if you came out to find a vulnerability in the network, right now we have an open network here, open Wi-Fi network. And if I play my network scanner on the network, and I see that there are some unprotected ports in some of our devices, for example, and I report this, I may easily be arrested, because I may be considered to have tested this network without permission from the parliament, and I may be arrested on the spot. This would be a problem, because I need to be here back for another forum at the end of the month. So I don't want to be arrested. Therefore, I did not use my network scanner, and I exposed myself to a risk because I connected to an open network, which I don't think it's encrypted. And then if it's encrypted, I don't know if my ports are open to maybe attackers that are using the same network. If we have smart legislation, such as what Belgium introduced very recently, this would be protecting me when I report such vulnerability. I would be able to test, I would, with of course good intent, I would have the need to report this without publicly disclosing, but report to our colleagues from the Romanian National Cybersecurity Directorate, and I would be protected. We need to work for such legislation across the European Union. This is not only something that we do locally in Bulgaria. We have a legislative initiative, the Digital Hub Trachea, of which the Bulgarian Cybersecurity Association is a member of. But we also have the best practices from across the EU. I would be very happy if we work together on having this as a pan-European legislative proposal, so that maybe we don't have people employed by the government, cybersecurity defenders, but would be able to tap into the potential for the thousands of cybersecurity researchers that would be able to then securely and safely report vulnerabilities, so that we would change the numbers and we would have far more defenders than North Korean attackers. That's my main point.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation of the problems that we actually face in having an organic approach to these issues. I'm happy that you did not pronounce the words cyber militia and cyber draft, although they'll probably be coming at one point. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Nagunel, who is the CEO of Zone IT Consulting.
First of all, I must say that I'm very happy to see that a lot of things from my speech had been already spoken. That says a lot for me about the quality of my colleagues here in the panel. And I have to specify that I strongly encourage the cooperation between all layers of society and between all countries on the same side. Because let's face it, in cybersecurity, we are already talking about two sides, the black hats and the white hats. And if we are talking about our side, the white hats, I strongly encourage the cooperation in all fields. Not only the technologies, bringing new technologies, bringing new implementation or services, but also in study and in trainings. Also, I have a lot of actions here in Romania in bringing trainings for youngs and for all people who are interested. But I can say that in training and specialization, we can speak also about awareness in cybersecurity, because it's already an old word in cybersecurity, which says that the biggest threat in a system, it's between the keyboard and the chair. So that's why I strongly encourage the cooperation, not only between civil society parts, but also from between law enforcement authorities, intelligence, military, and of course, civilians. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I give the floor over to London, I'd like to thank again the organizers, the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center for Resilience, because they brought such an interesting lineup of panelists with overlapping interests, but with quite different perspectives and experiences that really go together very well. So over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Andy. First, I'll pass the mic to Stefan. What do you think? What is your position on this, on the issue that we're discussing?
Thanks, Martin. I think I might take a slightly different perspective on this. I have an interest in organisations that fall below what might be called the cybersecurity poverty line, which is a phrase that was coined by Cisco then in 2011. There are a large number of organisations that are vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks, don't realise it, and don't actually invest in either the people who process all the technology in order to protect themselves. And those organisations find themselves in the supply chains of much larger organisations. And I have an interest as to why it is that organisations don't invest in protecting themselves. And cybersecurity over the last 20 years has grown from a very niche subject to something which is in all the newspapers all the time. But so many people still just think it only affects governments, banks, and large institutions, where in actual fact it affects absolutely everyone. And I think part of the issue is that we don't treat cybersecurity in the same way we might do, say, health and safety. where if you have a near miss, somebody nearly gets hit by a ladder, you can identify that and you can learn from it. And you probably have to make a note of it somewhere. Whereas in security, we as an industry have been very good at pushing those near misses away from the end user. You don't know when you've nearly been hacked. You don't know when you've had several thousand attempts at logging into your account, because those things are not shown. Because if they did show every time something like this happened, there would be an awful lot of noise. And so there's a question about whether organizations are under the cybersecurity poverty line by choice, or whether they've made a conscious decision simply not to invest. And this will become an issue at some point, particularly if you end up with, say, a kinetic conflict in Europe, for example, where if we do end up in a situation where there is a war somewhere, it'll be those smaller organizations like soup kitchens, like food banks, like churches, halls, and community centres that are going to be the ones on the front line to try and support people when things start to go catastrophically wrong. And they're the ones that absolutely do not have the level of security and protection that the larger organisations do. So do we as a society need to spend more time treating this topic as differently in terms of perhaps a health and safety issue, rather than simply just talking as a technology or as a technology problem?
Well, thank you. And Richard, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Martin. So in thinking about future cyber battlegrounds, where we're going to be in conflict and what we've got to do, I think we have to take the people, technology, and process aspects. And I wanted to try and bring those together and then round them back through to the topic of resilience, which a general tuition mentioned. And I think I want to take sort of a 3-year view, 3 to 5 year view, what will be happening. That's what I call the EARF phenomenon, which is what's going to happen to our technologies and how they impact people going forward. And we're getting an increasing democratization of technologies, where more and more power is getting smaller and smaller and getting into more and more people's hands. And there's some very interesting trends that are going ahead, which I think are going to hit us and which we're going to have to think about. And this will be, I'll explain why I come back to my view on operational resilience after this. But if we look at some of the new concepts that are coming up that we read about, for example, we read a lot about drone technology, and that's really interesting stuff. The Civil Aviation Authority in the UK has just said that in about 3 years' time, which is not that long for us to respond, they expect to have automated delivery services running across the UK with drones, which is a huge change to the way we work our infrastructure. But what I found interesting about that was, obviously there's going to be a lot of security issues around that. There's also 400,000 registered drone pilots in this country. So how do we educate those people? How do we make them security aware? So going back to the whole idea of supply chain, we're opening up a great big gap in those small organizations. And we then extend that out to IoT and OT, how we're going to run our manufacturing organizations, and robotics, and how we're going to be increasing more power at that level, which will mean that it will be increasingly open to attack, which means it will have greater impact, which means we have to look at our supply chain in a lot more detail. I think somebody's already mentioned AI. We don't really know how that's going to pan out over the next few years. We're going to get federated versions with smaller and smaller units at a big point. And so we're going to have to rethink now how we're going to manage that going forward, because that's going to accelerate rather rapidly. We also have to think of the civil issues that are going to come out of that. You get, I think it was Goldman Sachs came out with a review that in the next 5 years or something, 4 million people could lose their jobs. It's one of these numbers that comes out of the air. But there could well be civil satisfaction coming out about us, and how do we manage that? And how do we keep an eye on that? That to me is another 3 to 5 year issue that we have to worry about. And then we're going to look at more powerful computing. I think somebody mentioned crypto, and we have to look at the future of what will happen with quantum and how that will break crypto going forward in the 3 to 5 years. But also what interests me in that is we have to look at behind us all of the data that's been taken, stolen already, that is encrypted. And will that be broken? And will that then cause some kind of exposure to us? And we'll be looking over our shoulders, wondering what's going on. So we have to be aware what's gone already and how that's going to happen. So I think that we're getting all of these different sort of technology changes coming in. And going back to the supply chain, one area which fascinates me is the area of space. In the military terms, you think of land, sea, and air as being the main platforms, and space is now coming in. And I think it's still fascinating if you can go online and book a space launch with a credit card. I mean, it's just astonishing. But we have to think about how those tools are being produced as well, because here in the UK, there's lots and lots of little companies all around the place, just south of London, producing all these satellites, like they're producing, I don't know, croissants. I mean, it's just rolling out the whole time. So we have supply chain, smaller companies, going back to your, the poverty line. How do we make sure that it's secure down through that supply chain? So we have all of these different technology impacts coming through, and we're going to have to make sure that we start to manage those within our organisation. One final issue, which I think is going to happen on other threats, is what I call the legal and regulatory threats. And it's often said by many CISOs that the one thing they fear more than hackers is lawyers. And so we're going to have a lot more regulation going on, all of those topics that I've mentioned. And so we're going to have to keep ahead of that as well. So that's going to become not so much a battleground, but one where we have to monitor what's going on the whole time and put a huge amount of influence into compliance and resilience. And because of all these changes, I think we have to start thinking differently about security. And we go back to the NIST frameworks and so forth. What do we get? We get like protect, respond, recover. It's all about respond, recover. But I think we're going to have to start talking more a lot about innovation and adaptation, how our organisations are changing and how we match those changes and how we keep ahead of these technologies coming in and make sure our security is put in first over the last. So I think we're going to have to switch our security to be much more proactive rather than reactive, which it traditionally is.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Alex, we shall now move to the question session, and I would like to address the first question to Maria. So we've heard many very interesting pieces throughout the position statements, and a lot of them, I think, is oriented around civilian critical national infrastructure. So how do you see the future cyber battlegrounds? Do you think that this is something that realistically is addressed to civilian critical national infrastructure?
Thank you very much for your question. To begin with, I would like to mention that, at least from my perspective, the civilian and the military sides are the two facets of the same coin, and one cannot be perceived without the other one. And if we look, for instance, at the underwater cables, we can notice that more than 95% of them belong to the private sector. And this is where the project that has already been mentioned, EARF2024, plays its role in enhancing civil-military cooperation on cybersecurity. I'm glad that Mr. Archdeacon mentioned NIS2 directive, which is complementary to the Critical Entities Resilience Directive. And I would like to state that compared to the previous version, which was the Critical Infrastructure Protection Directive in 2008, and had only two sectors, transportation and energy, this time we have 11 sectors, including, for instance, public administration, and resilience needs, according to this complementary directive of NIS2, I quote, a critical entity ability to prevent, protect against, respond to, resist, mitigate, absorb, accommodate, and recover from an incident. So a whole plethora of actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Alex, over to you for your panel for this first question. How do you see this future cyber battle?
This question raised a lot of interest, so we have 3 interventions here, 3 hands up. I'd like to start with Ms. Schatz, please.
So we're going to hear several answers about where the future cyber battle space is located, so to speak. But let me give you one that I think is going to be a major center of gravity. starting out with the regular technology that we all use. We're going to see, and we're already seeing, a huge rise in things like scams, phishing emails, pretexting emails. The moment that ChatGPT was released, we saw a 1,200% increase in these sorts of scams, while at the same time we saw about a 30% decrease in the ability of filters to be able to catch them. So as we're seeing new capabilities come online, deep fakes, generative AI, we're going to see many more diffused and more challenging attacks just at that social engineering level. Second, and at the same time, we see that these new tools, such as generative AI, are giving us much worse malware or intentionally created cyber attacks. So, for example, we're able to give those kinds of hacking, script kiddie kind of capabilities to people who had less capacity before, or to increase the capacity of people or of actors to be much more efficient in creating bots, in creating malware that has something called polymorphism or living off the land, techniques that I'm sure you can talk about that basically mean they're harder, they're more difficult. But I think, so in addition to scamming, in addition to viruses and things like that that we're already quite familiar with, the combination of that with psychology, with the rise of nudge and neuroscience and neurotechnology and systems thinking, bring us to a new battle space. And that battle space is the cognitive domain. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. But I think the ultimate battle space of the future is cognitive warfare, where we're not fighting civil or military, but rather we're fighting at a societal level for our ability to make rational or at least good quality decisions, and where we can all understand the truth and reality together. Thank you.
Martin, over to you. I think Stefan has something to say.
I actually have a question myself, which is, when talking about Battlegrounds, we are almost implicitly talking about a military type adventure. And I'm quite interested to know where the split is between cybercrime versus nation state activity, and who actually owns the response to those sorts of things. Because, there's an awful lot of stuff that goes on these days that could be seen as being directed by nation states. And just to build on the previous point, AI is actually making it much easier to generate much more specific types of attack that previously perhaps were out of the reach of the script kiddies. So, is there I'm not open as to whoever wants to actually answer that, but, for example, the troll factories in various countries, democratizing cybercrime through the use of AI, are we actually opening the door to a sort of more complex response, given that it's difficult to tell whether something is actually a military campaign versus just basic cybercrime?
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor over to Brigadier General Marius Heinz Patrique from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try to give you a perspective from the public sector point of view, and I'll start by saying that, of course, the cybersecurity environment will differ a lot in the future, given the increased integration of emerging technologies, giving the accelerated digital transformation. We, for example, at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, have more than 160 public services. Not all can be accessed online, but this is the goal, which means a larger surface of attack surface for the uh, 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 yeah, for the hackers and the state or non-state actors. Of course, we have to consider quantum computing as a technology that is able to break down the current encryption methods. So we have to be prepared for, even now, we are still talking about quantum computing in the research phase. We have to be prepared because there are in public sector a lot of data and information that will be relevant when quantum computing will be used to decrypt all the encrypted communication that we are having today. And of course, maybe invest in developing methods of quantum computing safe encryption and resilient to any kind of attempts to decrypting by using quantum computing. And nevertheless, we already are very worried about the fact that the evolving of artificial intelligence brings up new challenges like cyber crime as a service, and we noticed a lot of increased activity in the criminal domain that integrates emergent technologies in conducting their criminal activities. And I think the main challenges for the public sector and for the states around the globe is to manage to pass the adequate regulation and standardization that could raise the level of security of our digital infrastructure. To prevent all these more sophisticated attacks that will come in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krista.
Yes, we at CrowdStrike, we published 2 reports. One is the Global Threat Report at the beginning of the year. And the second one is the Threat Hunting Report, middle of the year. And in the most recent one, we did see a huge increase on attacks focused on civilian critical infrastructure. So civilian critical infrastructure definitely will be a target. And we can help government institutions that are co-responsible for defending those infrastructures by providing tools such as proactive threat intel and real-time monitoring. We do believe that these are 2 key ingredients that only a vendor which has a global reach and understands the capabilities and tools of the adversaries and is able to distill the information for you to consume it, it's key. It's key when you make a decision how you defend the civilian critical infrastructure. And definitely there is a lot to unfold in this direction, but I highly encourage you to start with the 2 reports that are just 1 click away, and you will understand how the civilian critical infrastructure is more and more a target for the attackers, being it from North Korea, which has an army of very skilled adversaries, or Iran, or China, or Russia, doesn't matter. But behind each and every attack on this kind of infrastructure, for sure, is a state-sponsored group of adversaries. And we at CrowdStrike, we definitely understand the TTPs, tactic, techniques, and procedures of this group of adversaries, and we can help you implement proactive measures to keep ahead of the tradecraft of the adversaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, what are your thoughts?
So just to sort of repeat back the question is, if there's an attack, is it the site of criminals or is it a nation state? Who should respond to it? I think that if we step back into the role of the CISO who's sitting there and looking at the organization, I think first of all you have to look at your risk profile. Are you going to be one of those CNI targets that's going to be attacked, or are you will that be less down the risk profile? And then you have to build up the communications around that. To an extent, it doesn't matter because you'll still have to have the same security controls and to manage whatever attack it is. But what I've found over the years, and I think it's quite well developed now, is that those that are in CNI have very close links into government organizations that share this data. So they will see an attack or they will hear an attack, and that will be communicated very rapidly so that defenses can be put in. So it's almost a joint effort in order to try and protect the CNI areas. And I know one sort of CNI industry here where all the CISOs are on a WhatsApp group, and they send out messages to each other the whole time. So they're communicating, collaborating enormously quickly on any particular attack, any vulnerability, and so forth. So I don't think it's a very clear line division. I think it's how we communicate and collaborate between the organizations that are in the CNI who've identified nation states as a risk, and then the authorities who are going to be supporting them using international cooperation as well. One issue, of course, which has been around for a long time is attribution, and how do you know that it's a nation state attack? And I think General mentioned cybercrime as a service. Well, that of course is going to be used as a front for nation state attacks. So I think it's going to need the ability to investigate further, to peel back the layer of disguise that is used by a nation state using criminals as being their front operatives, so that we can understand what the attack is. So it would be going back to looking at the risk profile of the organisation. If you think you're going to be a nation state attack victim, how do you actually manage that? And then how do you then go communicate and collaborate across your industry with your peers, and then back into the authorities so that you can communicate very rapidly and very quickly in an attack. That doesn't mean to say we ignore cybercrime aspects. Yes, we have to feed those or communicate those as well. So I think we just have to look at it from that risk perspective and then build our controls and our strategy around that.
Thank you. I think there's something I would like to pick up on, that many of the responses have mentioned the issue of new tools for the bad guys. Certainly one thing that we're going to be certain of for the future of cyber battlegrounds is the bad guys will be developing new tools. And one of those tools which has been mentioned is that of quantum. I think we're at this current moment in time waiting for one of the major panelists to develop a sizable and operationally effective quantum computer. I read in the news this week that now I think 22-bit keys are susceptible now to quantum decryption. There's a Chinese team that has published a paper. I think we can confidently ascertain from that that is the minimum key that the Chinese are capable of decrypting. So I'd like to ask the panel, what are your predictions on quantum security and safety? How can we prepare for this imminent world where quantum computers are going to be powerful enough to decrypt our currently encrypted data? And I'll pass that over to Bucharest team first.
So would anyone like to take up this question? Please, sir.
Hello. I saw a lot of words about quantum computing. And I have to say that there are a lot of fears. Maybe true fears, but another one, it's only an exaggerated fears. Because let's face it, quantum computing will not be only a malware weapon. It will be a cybersecurity tool for us. it will help us to protect, because we are talking about decryption. First of all, let's see where quantum compute will help the malware attackers or will help us. It will help for attackers, it will help in decryption and in brute force, basically another decryption. So what is the main target, the main scope when they are trying to attack an infrastructure or a system? They will try to get information in a reasonable time. So our motivation, our response should be to increase the complexity of our cybersecurity, of our infrastructure protection, enough to prove to attackers that it will not be very worthwhile to try to attack even with quantum computing. Indeed, if you are looking now, all the studies, all the articles about quantum computing, I saw something like the future quantum compute will assure the decryption of more than billion times for the actual security technologies. But I have to repeat, the same technology will be available to the white hats, to our part. And of course, as I saw, a lot of companies, and that's a message to be, let's say, more chill and not to exaggerate the rumors. A lot of companies, a lot of authorities from all over the world are working for quantum computing algorithms, quantum resistant computing. And not only authorities and companies, also a lot of scientists, because at the end, decryption and cryptography is a science. But as Mr. General already have told, I encourage to study, to have a very close attention on post-quantum facts, because there are a few information, let's face it, in public, in a private sector, if after 15, 20 years, my documents will be decrypted, it will not be a very big loss for me or for my company. But I suppose that in various, or a few zones in society, information will still have effect even after 10 or 15 years. So that's I'm trying to encourage to study and to search new solution for post-quantum compute era. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Mark. Quantum has been one of these big promises that's been coming for some years. And I think we're beginning to see it now coming. It's like the train coming down the line. It's actually going to hit us fairly soon, which is why I bring it forward as one of those 3 to 5 years that we have to be prepared for. I think we tend to think of it as a negative impact and how it will break our encryption keys. And I think the previous speaker brought up this, the very valid point. It's also an offensive tool that we could use. Once we have quantum keys developed, we can then start to make sure we secure our data. But if we look at it from the hostile perspective and how we're going to lose our data and have it unencrypted, when it comes to data, I always go back to the first principle, which is, what's your data governance want now? And what data you've got and where is it? I remember speaking to a CISO many years ago. He said, I'm quite happy to protect my organization's data if only I knew where it was. So first of all, we have to make sure that we understand where our data is, how it's encrypted, and where it's stored. Otherwise, we won't even know it's gone and it's been unencrypted. So I think we have to start thinking about that. What interests me about it as well is that I think this is one of the areas that's going to be hugely expensive to begin with. And we could end up with commercial and then non-commercial government military type solutions where you have literally air gap, because military won't want to start using commercial services. So we could end up with air gap type environments where you have 2 different lots of quantum computing. For the average user, it will initially be very expensive, so you have to be using quantum as a service or something like that, service quantum computing, in order to try and both encrypt and decrypt what the data is. So I think that could cause a hindrance to criminal gangs, but certainly not to nation states who have the money to invest I think we have to start looking at where our data is stored, back along the supply chain, seeing what is our crown jewels, where we can start to have to ensure that we bring in new encryption solutions along that line. And then have to understand how we can control data going forward and data that we've lost already. One of the other areas which interests me as well is in identity and use of biometrics and how that might be an alternative to the standard keys that we have. But I think that's something to go with.
Thank you very much. Mr. Daskalov, you wanted to intervene as well.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to just mention I'm very happy of the fact that we have on the table as well Dr. Adrian Vevera, whose colleague Carmen was kind enough to help us establish Women for Cyber in Bulgaria. Basically, ICI Bucharest helped us to have such a branch in Bulgaria, so I'm deeply thankful for this cooperation between our two countries. And speaking about cooperation between Bulgaria, Romania, and across the EU, and the uptake of new technology for the purposes of securing our future on the battlefield, my solution is not going to surprise you, but I'm always surprised how few are the people across different forums that have used this solution. And this solution is the pan-European network of digital innovation hubs established by the European Commission under the Digital Europe program. These hubs are set up, there are around 10 in Romania. If your organization has not used some of their services, which are absolutely free, or you are not part of some of these consortiums, do check the European Digital Innovation Hub network page on the the European Commission webpage. Check where they are located in Romania and what type of free services they provide. Because they are established for exactly this purpose, to encourage higher uptake of advanced technologies by small and medium enterprises and by institutions, which means not only quantum, but AI, big data, machine learning, high performance computing, blockchain, cybersecurity, brain computer interfaces. The entire concept is that small companies, smaller institutions, they don't recognize the need to use these technologies. If we continue the topic of quantum, for example, we now have 3 new standards, post-quantum encryption standards introduced by the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US just this year. Maybe I think it was August they were published. For example, if you are a supplier of accounting software and you want to secure your clients that are using this software, maybe you would be interested to check these new standards for post-quantum encryption, but you don't know how to integrate these standards in your software stack. That's why there are these hubs. There are around 150 across Europe. A small portion of them are specialized in quantum technology, but you can simply Google them, you can find them. It doesn't matter if they're in your country, they can be on the other side of the union. You can use their services for free because the European Commission wants you to test before you invest, to see if this new technology, new tool on the market makes sense for your business. If it makes sense, if you are happy with it, if it works for you, then of course these hubs are connecting you to the right players on the market, companies like CrowdStrike and many others, Bitdefender in Romania, and then of course they can service you further. So be aware that the digital innovation hubs are here. They offer to test before invest absolutely for free, up to 200,000 euro for 3 years. That's the state aid limitation. And they can be used by any small and medium enterprise, any institution across the European Union. Very few companies know about their existence, and we can just disseminate this information so that we can increase the uptake. The uptake of new technologies is dramatically low these days. I think in Bulgaria, only around 6% of SMEs are using external cybersecurity service providers, which means that the other 94% of Bulgarian companies simply rely on 1-2 IT guys to secure their business, and they're happy with it, which is very, very scary.
Thank you very much for those answers. Already this discussion is off to a flying start, and we're even creating marketing slogans, test before you invest, very important. I'd like to ask our speakers here and in London, what are the main the militaries, the intelligence agencies, the private entities, the public authorities, they're all competing for the same basic pool of talent. Retention is very difficult. I myself know of so many instances where cyber warriors from the military and other structures go to the private sector. So how do we ensure that the cyber environment has the cyber warriors that it needs? How do we stop the constriction of the pipeline? Mr. Krista?
A very quick answer would be give them tools to play with and constantly invest in their knowledge development. It's extremely difficult indeed for a public sector organization to compete with private sector organizations when it comes to skilled workforce. But in the end, if that particular person that is hunted by multiple companies, private and public, will find a place where she believes is going to develop further the knowledge and has the security that she needs to play with technology and access curriculums from different vendors that are so eager to provide education for free, I'm sure that is going to become a happy employee that is going to perform very, very well, and you will not be afraid that you hire her now and in 6 months she's going to leave the organization. My point is knowing so many vendors that they offer education for free, just reach out to them. CrowdStrike University is a gem of a program, and the plethora of trainings you will find there that are free of charge, and the value of those trainings are second to none. And I'm sure you'll find multiple examples such as CrowdStrike University out there. Again, collaboration. We are more than happy to further discuss about this kind of education programs, but keep in mind we do have them, and we are very much keen into offering them to you. Yeah, so education and the right several of lab environments with the proper technology that they can play with, I'm sure that's going to be easy to retain kind of employee. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And of course, there are other initiatives in the private sector, notably Cisco Networking Academy. We have a number of qualifications and 3 courses that are out there that are global and offered to anyone to get themselves started with a career. However, we've never had enough people working in cyber. We didn't have 20 years ago, we didn't have 10 years ago, we don't have now. Maria, how are we going to solve the staffing issue?
To begin with, while listening to the question that was posed by Alexandru Georgescu, our friend and associate expert, I was wondering why we need to focus on competition instead of collaboration. We know we are highly fragmented. There is also something called institutional jealousy at various levels within this wide multi-level governance paradigm. And I'm not talking about the national context, for instance. Additionally, I would like to mention that if we presume that technologies will converge in the future much more than they do today at a much higher speed and rate, why cannot this collaboration improve as well? So I think we should talk about collaboration. Of course, education is elementary in this respect. And education is not only for the ones who work primarily in the cybersecurity related sectors. We have had a very interesting workshop, and actually it was yesterday, the latest one, a workshop on cyber resilience in the energy sector, for instance. And of course, there are a lot of answers in here. So try to focus on collaboration instead of competition. Try to focus on building a community of experts instead of a society of experts, try to share their values and to disseminate them within a multi-level governance paradigm. Because what we need to build is a comprehensive resilience ecosystem, one in which, regardless of the sector that a malign actor might penetrate, should be secure. Thank you.
General Patricia, please, you wanted to take the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Competition for cybersecurity talent, it's a well-known fact. We are pursuing very fiercely to have the best and gifted experts on cybersecurity, given the challenges that we are facing. But if I were to add some general solution to the one that have already been said here, I will say that expanding educational program at an earlier educational stage would be one of the solution. But what we are doing at the Ministry of Internal Affairs level is trying to automate the routine for cybersecurity tasks and to give time to our experts to address more challenging cybersecurity issues. And that's why we're investing in AI and machine learning to automate this kind of basic task like malware detection or basic incident response. But I want to say an example of French gendarmerie. French gendarmerie has a very interesting and innovative project. French gendarmerie managed to gather 5,000 volunteers to help Ministry of Internal Affairs in French to raise the level of cybersecurity of its infrastructure, which is actually very appealing for me. Thank you.
Alex, we have Stefan who'd like to reply as well in London. So, Stefan.
Thank you. I mean, this has to go back to a more fundamental level. I mean, we haven't, as Martin said, had enough people doing this particular profession for many, many years. And since it's been become a really hot topic in the last 5 or 6, a huge number of people entered the profession. But what we need more, and it has to start from the very, very earliest stages to encourage STEM science technology in schools. We also have the industry itself is very male dominated. We need to break down those barriers to allow more women to feel that they can join this and find it interesting. But I would also argue that it's incumbent on us as the industry to reach out and go and help people as like either a program sort of sense to sort of find your local charity or food bank or whatever and actually offer some support. Or something I do, which is to go to primary schools and do demonstrations and get people to be, kids to be interested in this subject as, a potential career path. But we do need to do more to get more people in. I mean, 5,000 people is a drop in the ocean, unfortunately. It's a great start, but I think we need a lot more.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor for another answer to Ms. Schatz here.
So we've heard many people mention education. So let me be very clear, because this is the area that I've primarily worked in for most of my career. We're not going to succeed simply by adding more education and training to the pipeline, if that's even feasible. Most of our schools, most of our training centers are still built on this old Prussian school model of students in a classroom, sort of like this. And that's from the 1700s. So the new paradigm for learning is called the digital learning ecosystem approach. There's a lot that goes into it, but you can look this up. Basically, it's the concept of being able to leverage our various different types of technology that are available to make learning, training, education, just-in-time support available anytime, anywhere, with personalization enabled through AI and data to optimize it for each person. That sounds like a lot. Just look it up. The idea is that we are moving away from these old static models of education to a new augmented intelligence, or in other words, where we have learning and support all the time. And if all of that just sounded like, something that you're not sure about, take this one concept away. We cannot use the same models in the old legacy system to compete in this new system or to confront this new system. We can't simply substitute the old models, just taking a physical in-person classroom and putting it online and hoping that will work either. We need to fundamentally change the way we do that sort of education, training, and personnel support. And there are a lot of smart people out there working on it.
Thank you very much. I wanted to mention something, what you said about the Prussian model. One of the great Romanian educators once told me that the Prussian model resembles a factory, and it resembles one even more when you realize that they put the students together by data fabrication. So that's quite an interesting perspective. I'd like to take our first question from the audience, from Mr. Șeuleanu. Please, sir, introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Dragoș Șeuleanu. I'm working in a very advanced field in lasers. I'm working to extreme light infrastructure, nuclear physics in Măgurele. And we have face the same problem. For example, it's a researcher in South Africa, and there are 3 laboratories from 3 countries looking after this guy. And we are waiting after him to change his mind and to come to one of our laboratories, because in gamma we are very good and we want to have a Nobel Prize in this field. What is a possible solution we see here? Because in advanced research we don't have researchers, not only in Romania, all over the world. The PhDs usually are going to research, but we discovered that we need them in enterprises, innovative enterprises, because if we have results, excellent results in research, and nobody will understand what we are doing, nobody will pick up our results. So I think this is a possible exchange between experts working a period of their life in advanced research and then going in enterprises, and vice versa, when they feel that is possible. And here it's important to have a common approach, private sector, public sector, government, to see that we are dealing with citizens. Usually in these fields, in both fields, there are responsible citizens, and they understand that we need them and it's important to have a stable society. So advanced research and enterprises, the PhDs are moving from one side to another, and it could be a solution. I don't know if it's feasible for you, but this is what we are doing.
Do we have any reactions or answers? Please, Mr. Krista.
I want to comment, I believe a model would be part-time, half a day here, half a day there. Absolutely, in cybersecurity, we do have a lot of data scientists training and working on those machine learning algorithms and constantly optimizing and fine-tuning. So it's a lot of advanced research kind of job. It's in cyberspace and deal with bytes, not necessarily with lasers, but it's advanced kind of research. And I believe, yes, it's a framework where you can share such a tremendous valuable resource between 2 companies would be welcome. And I think it's also possible. It shouldn't be that difficult. And everyone will benefit out of this. That's my kind of solution.
Mr. Daskalov, please.
Yes, I also have comment on the great idea about promoting advanced technology research in applied aspects in business, in enterprises. But of course, we also need to touch the topic of funding this applied research and its implementation. So here I have, I would say, a remark on the speed that our governments, our innovation ecosystems are moving, and this speed is not fast enough. As an example, I can present the fact that in 2021, the president of Bulgaria, Rumen Radev, proposed 3Cs Initiative Innovation Fund. Currently, we only have a fund under this initiative for cooperation on the north-south axis of Europe. We have only a fund in the field of infrastructure, in transport and energy. In 2021, the other heads of state of these 12 plus countries from Estonia to Greece agreed about such an innovation fund, and such applied research initiatives can be funded under such an initiative. Now we are going towards 2025. And we don't have this innovation fund. It's still work in progress. It's still something that is being thought over. And once it's officialized, then we'll need to find investors to invest in this particular tool. So we are very, very slow. We need to be faster. And what I can suggest is that we can all think that's a great idea, but we need to think how can we actually implement instead of just relying on our governments. In the field where I'm working, like these digital innovation hubs, this 150 plus association members network, we started the so-called 3SI EDIH network, Digital Innovation Hub Network. So instead of waiting for this innovation fund to start, we decided to see if we can connect hubs from Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, and see if we can provide joint services for the SMEs from these countries. We cannot provide research on request, but this is something that's actually a very interesting idea, and maybe we can try to implement it in this framework of cooperation. So my ask to you to deliver this message is, please let's work on our governments being faster on these ideas and their implementation, because I don't know how many cities China built since 2021 and how many infrastructures, but we are still trying to create one single investment fund for innovation, and it's still work in progress, which is very sad.
Richard, what are your comments?
Well, thank you. It's a very interesting point, because how do you get that academic world and the commercial world coming together? And what I've seen happening very successfully is you getting spin-offs and you're getting joint research parks set up by academic institutions. So you're getting that crossover of research work into practical solutions, often jointly between the academic institution and perhaps SAR or something like that. And I know your organization does that and has been doing that for decades. So it's a very well-established route through. And I think we're seeing this all over Europe and the UK as well. So that's a good crossover where we're getting the benefit of the academic research of PhDs looking at these topics and then spinning out a solution that then gets picked up and commercialized. And the academic interest continues on. So we're merging the two together. We're bringing up collaboration between two different worlds. What is also interesting now, we're beginning to see some government agencies supporting this as well, trying to make sure that some of the topics and ideas that they're working on, picking up, also go into the commercial world. So you're getting that deep level of research now being made available to the broader community through the commercial world. So you get that, again, that collaboration going. So I think we are beginning to evolve this, and I think we need to see more of these innovation hubs set up and supported from the academic side. Where I think it's been very successful. Been some very noticeable startups which have come out from this kind of environment. So that's an area we have to think of very keenly.
General Patrick, please.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, since we're coming down to how we retain our specialists, or how we maintain the same number, if not increasing this number. I'd like to say that the public sector has understood for quite a long time now that the need to shift their recruitment strategy to mobility, and we embedded that in our current activities, and I think it will not be more. It will, until the financial issue will constitute an advantages, and we focus a lot on the challenging that we offer to the experts on cybersecurity that cannot be found in the private sector. Of course, we work with the private sector, but we also involve our experts in very complex interinstitutional, interdisciplinary projects that comes also with some financial incoming, and we are also giving them permission to work in the research field or even to private sector. So, yeah, these are the main direction that we're heading to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right now, we don't have any more answers for this particular question. Thank you very much to Dr. Sheolanu for this first public question from the audience. I'd like to invite General Hormuz to also ask a question. Please, sir, introduce yourself and your institution.
Yeah, thank you. I'm retired Major General Paul Hormuz, and for the moment I work for the New Strategy Center in Romania, Bucharest, but my comments and questions are in private capacity. So I very much appreciate the opening about the cognitive warfare, but I'm not going to go there because it will be too much fun for me. Since the title of the panel, it's about Battleground, just let's remember what the late John Boyd, colonel in US Air Force, used to say, that machines don't fight wars, people do, and they use their minds. That's the first statement. The second, that the attacks on our way of life from authoritarian rivals and extremist ideologies are difficult to defeat without undermining the very freedoms we want to protect. And that's where very much I would like the panelists to touch on. And in this respect, let me also come with a third statement. It's from Mr. Kieran Martin, which I'm sure is very well known in London. He was for 7 years the CEO of the National Cybersecurity Center within the GCHQ. And in April this year, in the House of Lords Committee on Communication and Digital, he stated that when they were asked during the election time to deal with the threats from cyber for disinformation, they said, to which state agency do you want to give effectively what sounds a bit like the regulations of truth? We are not going to do this for this election. And when he was asked why, he said, because we are a subunit of GCHQ, the British NSA. Are we supposed to validate the information put out by political parties? And that's the question for the panelists too. If you are going to have an independent arbiter of information, essentially, where are you going to put it? Thank you.
Alex, if I can pick up on this one, I think one of the goals of warfare for many centuries has been about winning over the hearts and minds of the target population. And I do wonder if actually the future battleground, I mean, we've spoken about infrastructure and attacks against computers, that actually the battlefield is hearts and minds. And with this new environment of constant media that we have created, we are creating new opportunities and new societal vulnerabilities in our societies where threat actors can intervene. There was one report I read the other week about, I forget who it was, but it was an influencer who had accepted money from the Kremlin to peddle propaganda. And for me, it raised two big questions. One, where do you apply for these kind of jobs? Maybe one of the best ways of actually combating this is, sure, I'll take the money, and we can debate about whether I'm towing the party line or not later. And the other issue is thinking actually maybe this is also an opportunity for us to think about things differently. And we've heard about moving away from that Prussian model of education, but really encouraging our citizens to question stuff, question what you're reading online. It's not necessarily true. Behind every single message, there's someone with an agenda that's trying to peddle this. And rather than just stop it, let's try and raise the level of media literacy and our media awareness, so that we can combat this. The front line in the war for hearts and minds, really, it's up here, it's in the brain. And we need to stop thinking about cyber defenses and blocking and preventing, and actually encourage people to be resilient themselves. Richard, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think you're right, Rod. It's about making the front line, every person who's interacting with the technology, with the information. And we're going to have to do that over a period of time, whilst making people aware of what can and what can't happen. We saw this in the UK recently in some disturbances which were lit up by people outside the UK. One was in Finland, one was in Pakistan. People who spread disinformation, so it can be very, very destructive. But I think Martin's point is a very good one. We have to make people aware, educate them of this as an issue. And it does remind me, going back to that previous question, how do we train people in cybersecurity and so forth? Remind me of CISO, I worked with ones who went into the company meeting and said to everybody, who's on my security team? The security team members put their arms up. He said, wrong, you all were wrong. And he wanted everybody in the company to be in his security team. They had to be aware, to be alert. And so I think we have to start off at the education level about making sure that people are aware what they could be reading could be wrong, and how to analyze and check and double check. I think we probably will do that. We see something, we go and double check it on the facts, what was the danger of it. And I think that's going to be part of the process of education we'll have to bring in. And we've already started that to an extent. I think you mentioned schools training kids how to be aware of what they might read online. I think they'd have to beef that up. And of course, we're already getting legislation as well, which is driving the main media technology companies to start bringing more control over what gets posted and what doesn't get posted, more particularly in the criminal area. So I think it's going to be that combined effort of awareness across the organisations, that everybody's on the security team, and then also making sure that we do that cross-checking and watch to see what legislation comes in to drive the big tech companies to double check on everything that gets published on their platforms.
Yes, I think we have also an answer from Bucharest. Ms. Schatz, please, if you'd like to intervene.
I'll simply add to what's already been said. And let me again reinforce that when we say education, which absolutely I agree with, please don't think we're going to somehow give children in a school some sort of mental vaccine and then they'll be protected throughout their lives. This is a new model of training and education, of lifelong learning that's going to be essential. As part of that, we also need to be thinking about augmented intelligence, people with artificial intelligence and other kinds of digital tools to help them navigate this space that we live in. And that human system teaming, that human computer teaming, is not necessarily just one person and one algorithm. There's some really amazing work to include, for example, from Riccardo Poli from the University of Essex, up there with our UK colleagues, looking at human-human AI teaming. So looking at these collaborative models where multiple individuals can intentionally weigh in. We see some of this work actually even in reality with things like community notes in social media, which have proven to be quite effective. So this is kind of answering a different question than you asked. Not an organization, but rather a diffusion of responsibility with people and technology. And I will say, because we are on a technology panel, that there's also really amazing emerging technical solutions as well, to include, for example, distributed identifiers and verifiable credentials that allow us to do things like establish networks of trust. So even if I'm anonymous, we can still verify that I have an identity that's acceptable. So I think through these different technological solutions, in particular through human digital teaming and new ways of conceptualizing what lifelong learning looks like, that we can be successful. All of this, of course, requires us to invest in new models and new technology. And just like the other speaker said, we can't wait for someone else to do it. We all have to raise our hands and participate in this solution.
Thank you. Stefan, your thoughts?
Thanks. I'm just building on what Richie was saying. This is actually a societal issue that goes sort of beyond either organisations or specific groups. I mean, I have two small kids, and they're actually pretty good at identifying things that they're a bit suspicious about. I'm more worried about my parents, who are outside of education, who are retired, and don't get any targeted information whatsoever about how to identify these sorts of things. I worry that if we concentrate either on the organisation or on children, we're missing out large chunks of society who wouldn't otherwise get this sort of training. Don't forget, every person who works at a company, has a different persona at home, right? And they have kids, and they have parents and grandparents. People have sort of split personalities in that sense, and we need to target people outside of the organisation as much as we do within.
Yes, Mr. Krista, please.
Thank you. Step back to the comment from the audience about the battleground and about the fact that behind each and every arm is actually a mind that is putting up that particular fight. So this is so close to the philosophy of CrowdStrike. We are tracking more than 340 adversaries groups, being them e-crime, hacktivist, or state-sponsored, highly skilled groups of adversaries. Because in the end, these are the three major kind of attackers we have there on the cyber battleground. We should definitely ask a few questions. Who is attacking me? Why I'm getting attacked? And most importantly, how can I defend against those kind of attacks? And welcome to Counter-Adversary Operations by CrowdStrike. This is exactly the entity that is helping you find the right answers. It's about tracking the adversaries. It's about naming them. All those 340 groups have a name, because we want to emphasize the fact that it's a human behind. Take a scatter spider, for example, which is extremely active on e-crime scene, and many others, famous Cholima, bears, a lot of bears, a lot of Cholimas in North Korea. Kittens are the names of the group of adversary coming from Iran. So when you are able to understand their tradecrafts and techniques, then you are much better protected against attacks that are coming from them. The human behind the malware, the human behind the attack itself. Yes, so counter-adversary operations is particularly the entity within CrowdStrike that is helping you to find the answers. Thank you.
So there's one thing that we haven't discussed in detail, which we can't ignore. I think one of the largest technical advances of the previous decade, which came as a great shock, I think, a couple of years ago, ChatGPT. And if you spend more than 10 minutes playing with it, you'll be absolutely amazed at the types of things that it can do. This is only the beginning of the emerging AI revolution. As processor speed increases, the amount of data that we can store and process increases, then suddenly we have the opportunity to train algorithms against this and start inventing new content. For the moment, yes, it's a bit of a parlor trick, and we can get it to create plausible human speech and also plausible computer code. Not always entirely correct computer code, it must be said. But clearly this is going to evolve. So how does AI fit into this future battleground? Are we going to be a bit like Terminator, continuously battling against these cyborgs, autonomous cyborgs, or is our life going to be an awful lot more ethical, and actually we're not going to get the Terminator revolution, we're just going to have sort of parlor tricks and tools on our disposals. I'd like to pose that to the panel in Bucharest. What changes do you think AI is going to bring to the cyber battlefield or to cyber security in the next 5 years or so?
Mr. Nagu, I think you wanted to intervene.
Thank you very much. I'm surprised that we are talking about AI in cybersecurity like it isn't already here. It's a very thin border between machine learning, behavioral detection, and artificial intelligence. But let's face it, we already have all of this. Basically, on our parts already AI, it's more or less already integrated. The real question is if AI will help the other part to counterattack our measures. Yes, of course, because it's like in every war, it's all about the resources. And AI, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, will help the other parts to consume more effectively their resources, their limited resources but in a few days ago, I have an exercise with one of my colleagues, and we were talking exactly about AI in cybersecurity, and he told me at this moment, hey, what will an AI do? What the people will not be able to do? My answer was, indeed, maybe AI cannot do anything else than a people can do, but an AI can do the same things more faster than a people. That means let's imagine one attack against one system. He will try to scan the ports, right? A human will receive a report. Hey, your ports it's scanned. Here, more than 65,000 ports. He'll try to read the report, but the AI already scanning. He already found a few hundreds. He already trying to breach those ports. The human, it's still reading the reports. He already penetrates our system. He is already making a lateral movement. The people is still trying to find the opening ports. And already on a trained AI, it's already 1 step, 2, 3 forward than a human. Why? Because he is more faster. But also, an AI could take decision in protection for us. He's seeing that somebody are scanning our ports, right? Our AI will respond. He will close automatically all the unnecessary ports. He will also, if activate the DMZ zone. Is also close all the barriers for the critical data, infrastructure, or processes. That will be in a matter of seconds. That will be the use of AI. Of course, we will have the ethical discussion, but I'm thinking that this is not my competence, it's not my expertise. Why? Because if the other parts will not be aware, will not have a worry about ethical discussion in these battlefields, it will be pretty harsh for us to respect the rules, but also to counter their measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, your comments. So it's a big topic, very, very hot topic at the moment. So I think the previous speaker said it's here already in one form or the other. Although I share Martin's view about its coding abilities, I spend more time decoding the stuff and changing it than it does. But I think let's just sort of step back from the strategic point of view and see what is the impact going to be. And I mentioned earlier about this whole idea of operational resilience and how we have to look at it in 4 blocks. The controls we put in, how we monitor, and how we adapt and innovate. And this is general for business. This comes from some work I'm doing with an organisation called Cranfield University Business School. This is how businesses should remain resilient. So innovation and adaptation is going to become a key driver for resilience, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, whatever you want to call it, is going to be part of that innovation. We have to adapt our security to do that. So let's look at it from a defensive point of view. There's lots more framework coming out, but if I step back at it with my old cynical security person's hat, it's the same but different. We're going to have to do all the same things we've done before, but just slightly differently. We're going to have to understand the risk model, the threat model. We're going to have to have the right controls in place. So, for example, data governance is going to be important. Who has access to our data? How do we control access and authentication into the data sets? How do we control the validity of those data sets? Then how do we make sure that the data is stored correctly? And then how do we make sure that connectivity is secure? So all of those different aspects of control that we have already will just need to be adapted and modified to this new technology that's coming in, so that we know that people will be using it correctly from the technology point of view. We then have to go through the whole process side, especially with regulation coming in. We've already mentioned, I think, some of the EU regulation coming in. This is going to become increasingly international. There's going to be different approaches, so we're going to be mapping the whole time how that regulation will go. So that's going to be a big effort that we're going to have to require. And understanding how we run it within the organisation and have a framework to do that. I think at Cisco they had a principle and a framework which are open. Anybody can have a look at them. They had a set of principles about how AI is developed, and then how it is used within the organisation. And this is actually in line with, for example, the EU Act, even though it came out 4 years ago. So there's a template that can be used to make sure that we are progressing in the right way, making sure that we are considerate of other different requirements, for example, data privacy. That's going to be a big issue, the clash between privacy and AI. We're still not sure how it's going to work. So, for example, an IP address, personal IP address, that's private information. So how do we manage that within our identity situations? And our solution is just have a hash that we can't store it, but we have to address that kind of issue right at the very beginning. So I think we're going to have to look at the processes and the technology side. In terms of the people side of AI, it's going to produce a threat as well as a benefit. The threat is obviously going to be more sophisticated attacks through that human being through the front door. And I think 8% of all breaches in the UK anywhere are phishing attacks. So we're just going more sophisticated phishing attacks. Can we beat those back with more sophisticated AI-driven analytical tools? And I think we're beginning to get that already. So it's going to be how we train people to use that technology in light of the business requirements. And can they actually believe and can they understand the answers they're getting back, which goes back to our disinformation solution as well. And I know one financial institution that actually banned any AI use amongst its staff. It's a VC organization, because they believe the staff won't understand the answers they're getting back. So they say, go back and work up the numbers yourself. don't believe AI because you won't know if the answer is correct or not. So we're going to have that kind of education around awareness of what kind of message you're getting through that in order to change the awareness that people have. So I think we're at the beginning of the curve. There's going to be a huge push from businesses on that innovation square. And we're going to have to start to change our standardized way of working in order to absorb that form of innovation that's going through. I agree with the previous speaker as well, because here it's often helping security. And I think the general mentioned that you could automate tasks, so starting questions. So that I think is the benefit we will probably get from AI. So let's try and work on those benefits by being aware of how it's going to impact the risk that our organization faces and how we can start to help the businesses innovate and adapt to this new technology.
Thank you. Response from Bucharest.
Yes, Mr. Krista, please.
Yes, so AI in the battleground, cyberspace battleground. It's a topic dear to me because I strongly believe we have an advantage here. We, as the defenders of the networks, we do have an advantage. First and foremost, we are using AI prior to the attackers leveraging AI against us. This is first thing. Second, we are able to see that AI is not that much useful to the attackers in the current days, because we didn't see an increase in the complexity of the attacks thanks to AI. We did see indeed attacks that are much faster thanks to AI, but not necessarily more complex, solely thanks to AI. It's not the case. It's not the case. Maybe it's going to be in the future. We don't know. But CrowdStrike is analyzing day in, day out malware and is analyzing and it's helping organizations on a daily basis to escape from attacks. We do a lot of incident response all over the world. And this is our conclusion. Yes, much faster, but not necessarily more complex. So AI is playing in our advantage, the good guys in the battleground. Of course, I want to remind you about a quote from a movie from the end of the 80s, The Untouchables, in which Sean Connery is saying, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So this is for us to understand that we always have to innovate, because we can't fight against adversaries that are leveraging the speed of attacks powered by AI against us. But we do have so many technical solutions that are AI native, that are helping us to investigate extremely fast an attack, to understand it and to block it before it's becoming damaging to us. So I am extremely optimistic in the role of AI in the battleground in cyberspace. We do believe we, the defenders, we do have a big advantage. We just need the right technology that is AI powered to complement our efforts to stop the AI powered adversaries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think in the very short term, AI gives a lot of companies an opportunity to sell a lot more products and with expensive new solutions that many companies probably won't be able to afford. I think, in all seriousness, from previous discussions, to build on what people have said, it doesn't feel like there are any new novel types of attack being generated by AI, but it is democratizing the criminal element to allow a wider breadth of sophisticated attacks to go after organizations that perhaps haven't previously seen much in the way of threat. And my concern is that we have a large proportion of businesses that are not adequately protected, that fall below that cyber security poverty line, and where we have AI sort of defense tools, like saw tools, they're often priced in such a way that they actually, they're priced in such a way that they reflect the cost of cost savings from having an individual doing that particular task just more quickly, which doesn't really help the smaller organisations who've got a very limited sort of budget. So, you'll end up with, I think, a lot of people, a lot of organisations that are being attacked successfully through these new dark LLMs that are coming out, because obviously, phishing attacks are becoming more sophisticated, who don't realistically have a way of necessarily combating these at the speed that is necessary in order for them not to be breached.
Marie.
I'd like to mention that besides our flagship conference, which is Outlook of Resilience, and had as this year's topic the dawn of AI on various sectors. This time, last week, we were in Croatia ending a successful workshop on international workshop on artificial intelligence and its impact on lethal autonomous weapons systems. We organized this workshop together with Rakvijak Center for Security Cooperation, and we had audience from 10 states, primarily from the Western Balkans. The cherry on the top of it was creating and running the tabletop exercise on lethal autonomous weapon systems in 2050.
Thank you. Over to Bucharest, where I believe you have an audience question.
Thank you very much. Please, sir, introduce yourself and your institution and ask the question.
Hi, I'm John Walsh from Sitespan in the United States and Intelligence Group. This has been an unbelievable experience, and listening to everybody has been fascinating. I think this is an interesting topic. Several years ago, when I was introduced to the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Group, I was interviewed about quantum computing because I simply love it, and I think it's going to change the world for a better world. We're going to cure diseases that we never thought we would be able to cure. The mathematical models are astronomical, and there's so many good things. But while I was sitting here, I took some notes, and some of the words I wrote down weren't related to quantum computing or AI. They were related, but augmented intelligence, human digital teaming, human AI. These were critical words that I wrote down that I want to think about, right? And that's what I want to take away from. But I want to ask everybody, really, we've created all of these technologies, man. We've invented them, and now we're coming up with new technologies to fix the problems of the old technologies. This is the way it is. And we're going to continue to do this till the end of time. And technologies will advance, and so will CrowdStrike, and so will our defenses. But what could we as human beings, since we're embedding all this, what could we, if we just step back and get away from our keyboards, what could we as human beings do to be resilient and to help? I offer that to everybody.
Any answers in London?
I think probably the best thing that we could all do is get involved with the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Centre and similar stuff. It's about talking about the issues. Issues get solved through dialogue and understanding. And so having this kind of event, this kind of organisation, I think is vital so that we do invite a diversity of point of views, a diversity of ideas into how we are going to manage and cope. I mean, we're finding it difficult enough to cope with the current situation, let alone the future situation. I think one thing that's constantly on my mind is that we have reached this point of where we are now with our current tools and knowledge and approaches. And if we want to go further and really solve the problem of cyber insecurity, we're going to need new ideas. We're going to need new approaches, new ideas, and that's going to come from diversity, which means broadening the appeal and the type of people that we talk to, getting more ideas, getting new ideas, getting new blood. I do like to think the issue of cyber insecurity is something that can be solved within my lifetime. There are only so many ways that systems can be breached. We know that. There are only so many ways that you can create propaganda and spread it. And I don't think this is an insolvable problem, but we're going to need new approaches, new blood, new ideas.
We have an answer here in Bucharest.
Alex, over to you.
Yes, so Ms. Schatz and then Mr. Daskalov.
So I won't repeat some of the things that were already said, but let me just say that this adds to what we've discussed. But you asked about some specific methods that from a human-centric perspective, we can achieve some of these outcomes. So thinking about that just very briefly, let me recommend 3 things for us to consider. First, we've already discussed the notion of cooperation and how important it is to have organizations and nations and civil and military cooperation. We all understand that. But what does that mean in practice? I think that we need to borrow concepts from technology where they focus on things such as open systems architecture or microservices architectures, or in other words, this idea of having small pieces that have ways of being interoperable but are still separable. We can do that at an organizational level if we rethink some of our processes, which leads me to the second point. The way that our organizations are organized, and I literally mean like the way that our departments are scheduled on a chart and how we report up to leadership and the things that we value, such as analyses and reporting, those are all structured for a different world. There's excellent research on this. If you want to write down another topic here, Dave Snowden for the US DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, created a model called the Cynefin model. He's Welsh, so that's spelled exactly differently than you think. It's Cynefin, Cynefin. The point of it is that it discusses how different organizational environments are best suited for different kinds of worldwide environments. We're no longer living in a complicated world where analysis and methodology and hierarchy can get us through. We instead are living in a complex world where we need to be organized into smaller systems, teams of teams, this Lego block architecture where we plug together, just like an open systems architecture and technology. So we really need to rethink our organization and leadership methods, and there are roadmaps to do that. And then finally, not just at the big organizational level, but at the individual level. As somebody said earlier, you know, that the biggest vulnerability is between the keyboard and the seat, right? So how many of you, we've all been around government, you've had to pay taxes at some point, right? So everyone has used a government system before. How is that experience for using a government website? Or some sort of other, technical system to fill in your timesheet. I'm already seeing people smiling because you know that user experiences can often be quite bad. There's so much good research that points to the importance of user-centered design, user experiences, or if you want to be very formal about it, implementation science. We often fall down at that same place. So if we can invest in the user experience, that user-centered design, that's also going to get us towards the future. Thank you.
Mr. Daskalov?
Sure. Well, as Alex said, I started the panel with presenting the idea of a cyber militia. So everything from here on is just down slope. But I just want to reemphasize on the fact that we need to set up a legal framework which allows us to take responsibility and, of course, be held accountable against this legal framework, because there was a very negative policy against the LGBT community in the US Army some years ago, non-formal, I suppose, don't ask, don't tell. And in the cybersecurity field, it's still like the same thing. You don't test and you don't disclose, because in both cases you might be vulnerable. So we need to change this. And therefore, everyone can be responsible to check, to test what he is using, to disclose if there are certain issues and risks, and help the others. And this can be done like right away if we're smart enough. And the second aspect about what we can do is a bit even more controversial. because someone can say it's like anti-globalist, which is not, but it's about technology sovereignty and striving for such sovereignty in times of crisis to be resilient. And as you were well aware, the new European Commission will have a European Commissioner on technology sovereignty. When it comes to technology sovereignty, it's not really that hard of a subject to speak. It simply can be broken down to initiatives such as investing more in European startups. There are researches, including regional startups in this part of Europe. There are researches that clearly show, I'm making a reference to yesterday's panel with the colleagues from Texas. Researchers show that capital markets are, equity investors that are risking more to invest in startups are regional by default, which means that if I'm set up in San Francisco, I'm more reluctant to invest in startups from the Silicon Valley. I'm more, open to invest. If I'm based in London, I'm managing equity fund, I'm more open to invest in startups from London. And we need to encourage more investments in European startups in the field of cybersecurity, but not only in the field of advanced technologies abroad. And there are some initiatives that are being done when it comes to having our own responsibility. For example, we in Bulgaria next month, at the end of the month, 28, 29, are organizing access to finance event for cybersecurity startups from across the region. So you are all invited to invite colleagues from Romania, startups from Romania who are working in the field of security to come and pitch in front of investors and connect them with investors, but also the European Cybersecurity Organization, together with EARF2024, the European Cybersecurity Competence Centers based in Bucharest. I suppose there are representatives of EARF2024 right now in the hall or at the conference. So they are helping us to bring these access to finance workshops throughout Europe. And this is a good thing because we can not only wait for our colleagues from Austin to come and bring the funds, we need to activate local funds to achieve certain level of technology sovereignty as an instrument in the fight for greater resilience. This is the solution that we are working on. And I hope it would be developed, but it also is a matter of responsibility on the politician side, because at the end of the day, okay, you are able to activate equity investments in advanced technology startups, but then it's very hard for people to invest themselves, because in Europe we don't have, I'm sharing for a colleague from the US, we don't have a common capital market. We don't have. It's very hard for someone based in Sofia to invest on the Bucharest Stock Exchange or in Poland or whatever. And we need to work on this, but it's a bit beyond my scope, so I'm just encouraging politicians to really work on this very urgently.
Thank you very much for that intervention, covering quite a lot of different issues, but I'm surprised, well, not really surprised, happy to see how many of the answers that we get ultimately come down to security culture, resilience culture, cyber culture, and so on, and how important the human element still is, even though we discuss a lot about the digital emerging technologies, about AI, about Skynet replacing us, and so on. I'd like to thank all of the panelists here for a wonderful job, and the organizers as well, and to send it over to Martin Lee in London to do the honors.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That's been an incredibly interesting forum. The time has flown by, but unfortunately it's time to wrap up. So I would like to thank everyone here on the panel, Maria Garau, Richard Archdeacon, Stefan Friedman for being here, and especially our host, so Aura Woodward, the director of the Romanian Cultural Institute, and everyone here. Thank you so much for hosting us today. And I believe it's now over to Gabriella to say some final words.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you all for such great discussions today. Throughout the talks, I have noted down some keywords that showed up quite frequently in the conversations: cooperation, civilian, military, academic cooperation, innovation, AI, quantum, education and awareness, supply chain. We talked about empowering researchers in cybersecurity, and I learned a new phrase that I'm going to borrow, cybersecurity poverty line, which is very interesting. Talking about cooperation and civilian military cooperation, I would like to talk about a project where the EARC is part of, alongside with the National Directorate for Cybersecurity, ICI Bucharest, and I would like to salute the presence of ICI Bucharest Director here, Mr. Adrian Vevera. Thank you for being here with us. And the Maritime University of Constanța. This project is about strengthening synergies in defense and civilian cybersecurity. It's abbreviated eCybridge, and it aims to reinforce the coordination and synergy between the civilian and defense sectors in cyberspace. Recognizing the intertwined nature of these sectors in today's digital landscape, this project seeks to increase exchange and coordination between the cybersecurity, civilian and defense spheres and cultivate a cohesive strategy bolstering European resilience against cyber threats. Nowadays, security done in silos is not efficient, as most threats are interconnected, the boundaries between the civil and military sector being frequently blurred. For an increased defense efficiency, we aim to adopt a converged approach between the most relevant stakeholders to build an effective defense synergic mechanism that starts with mutual understanding. Considering that cybersecurity is at the heart of a safe digital transformation in the European Union, eCybridge is positioned to align with existing EU cybersecurity, defense and research frameworks and the themes and priorities of the European Defence Agency, European Defence Fund, Horizon Europe and Digital Europe in the digital realm. Serving as a conduit for ideation exploration, it also offers a collaborative platform, paving the way for advanced cybersecurity solutions in the EU. I would like to tell you a couple of the KPIs. Number of concrete activities involving both civilian and defense communities, like conferences, workshops, exercises, roundtables, white paper production, webinars, training sessions, network creation, 24. Minimum of 63 events hosted by the project activities, panels, keynote speeches, networking sessions, training sessions, technology presentations, exercises, etc. Minimum of 1,360 individual participations. Minimum 150 directly participating organizations, a minimum of 25 directly participating SMEs and startups, minimum 5 directly participating industrial stakeholders, minimum of 7 active collaborations implemented with other relevant initiatives or European players, minimum 10 participating EU member states, and minimum 37 written papers, 22 reports, 2 proceeding books, 2 TTX scenarios, 2 TTX handbooks, 2 lessons learned papers, 3 white papers, 1 network database, 1 sustainability plan, and 4 syllabuses. I would like to pass the floor to Mrs. Claudia Lascadeu from the National Directorate for Cybersecurity to present a very important project that they are working on.
Thank you, and I would like to present shortly, I know it's late, what the Directorate is conducting right now. Our project is aims to strengthen Europe's digital security with independent DNS protection, basically. That's why it's called very simply DNS for EU. The goal of the European Commission funding that we accessed was to strengthen the digital security and independence of the European Union. By providing EU citizens, companies and institutions with a secure, privacy-compliant and powerful recursive DNS. The challenge was that the EU governmental institutions and citizens are not well protected and with a slow reaction to threats. That's why the DNS level protection was not located in the EU. The solution is that we aim to create by the end of 2026 an independent EU-based DNS protection with a real-time reaction to threats. with easily distribution to citizens and institutions. That's the outline of our project, and I don't want to keep you further. If you are interested with more details in our project, I'm sure you can find us online. Thank you.
Thank you very much for staying with us. And for those who are returning home by airplane, I wish you safe travels. For the rest, the weekend is just starting. Have fun, and we'll see you very soon at our next EARC event. Thank you.
Great.